Okay, so what he's going to do is going to make an offering. We're going to offer these things over here. It's like 10 involved. This mandala, like imagine all the marvelous things of the world that we all use. Have a body, a statue.
This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and moon. Imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it, where all living beings enjoy this pure land. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion, that form the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Nyayatayami.
Okay. Now you can hear me, you people. Zoomers, can you hear me? Amy in Melbourne, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Properly. Do I have to shout any louder? No. Okay. You sure you can all hear me? Give me your hands up if you can all hear me. Good. Okay, fantastic. How many people there on Zoom? Wonderful. I can't see all of you, but I'm happy you're all there. Okay, I understand. Yes, exactly. Okay, here finally. We're all here, organized. Thank you, everybody. So I should do one more little prayer. This one down here. This one in the middle, this one. So I'll leave that one. So basically, I'll just say it in English one time. Basically, what we're saying is we're stating, first 2 lines, we're expressing our reliance on the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. If we feel we're already Buddhist, we then reiterate that reliance. But the second 2 lines are expressing, the Lamas would say it's expressing our motivation for our being together doing this activity. But we might say, what's our purpose, you know? So let's make our purpose expansive. Let's make it an altruistic purpose. Let's think we're going to listen to these teachings, to think about the meaning, so we can take some advice from it, it's advice, some tools from it that we can use in our daily lives. Really, in this particular talks we're giving today and tomorrow are related very much to the development of love and compassion for others, so that we can develop these amazing qualities. So we can really devote ourselves to developing our marvelous potential so we can be a benefit to others. So thinking that's our purpose. So I'll just sing this little prayer in Tibetan that expresses that idea. Sangye charang soke chomnam la, jang tru badu dagni chak suchi. Nagi Chernyen Gipe Sonam Ki Zola Penchil Sange Drupa Shok Sange Chadam Soke Chognam La Jang Truba Dagni Kapsuchi Nagi Chernyen Gipe Sonam Ki Zola Penchil Sange Drupa Shok Sange Chadam Soke Chognam La Jang Truba Dagni Kapsuchi Nagi Chernyen Gipe Sonam Ki Rola Penchit Sange Drupa Shok. Okay, so these 4 immeasurable thoughts. A nice phrase, you know. Well, straight away we should see where it fits in the big picture of all the teachings. You know, if you're a bit familiar with some of the Tibetan Buddhist teachings, you're going to be familiar, especially if you come to this center, with this packaging of the teachings called the Lam Rim. So basically based on it's kind of plucking out from all the vast body of knowledge, the literature, the Buddhist literature over the centuries, the essential points of the Buddhist teachings that one, as a Buddhist, would internalize, but in a very specific order, in an order according to your capacity, in order according to the level of the disciple, the level of the student. So that's one way of packaging the Lam Rim, as they call it. But another way which actually covers that, and I repeat this, I always say this, I use this as an example, this analogy. You know, they say a bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. So the wisdom wing, it's not evident unless we understand this, is all the nuts and bolts really of Buddhist teachings about karma, about the mind. And these are the tools that you use to develop yourself, to really put yourself together, to be less neurotic, less miserable, less depressed, less angry, less attached, more wise, more content, more fulfilled. It's really the work you do on yourself. But then and what that does essentially is prepare you for the real work of being of benefit to others. That's the compassion wing. So, you know, you could say the compassion wing is the point. But as the Dalai Lama says, compassion is not enough, because you need to have done the wisdom wing first. It prepares you. In other words, if you're so overwhelmed by your own misery and your depression and anxiety and depression and jealousy, you can't lift a finger to help anybody, you know. So it's kind of reasonable that you put yourself together to whatever degree, and then that qualifies you then to realize we're all in the same boat. Kind of you extend yourself to encompass others. So this particular approach, this sweet little, this prayer really, these aspirations, the four immeasurable thoughts are completely the bodhisattva path. This radical approach, level of compassion that the Mahayana Buddhist view would describe in detail. And it's quite surprising to us because it's quite radical levels of compassion. I mean, that's a really good word, radical. So it's really crucial that we understand this, you know. So these four, in the course notes, everybody knows about their course notes, Sheila, do they? Where's Sheila? They all know that they're online. You all know your course notes are there. You can they're formatted for a tablet and a phone. And basically there's a version of the four immeasurable thoughts in there from Lama Zopa. There's a little meditation on each one. The one that I know by heart is a bit of a different translation, so I'll say that, but it's essentially the same. It's really good that you get those course notes. And there's other teachings in there that will suit us for the rest of the week. They're online. You can download as a PDF. So the four immeasurable thoughts then. Well, first of all, when we say a prayer, it's really important to understand what we mean by prayer. One approach to what a prayer is in Buddhism is it's a wish. It's an aspiration. May this, may that. These prayers are may this, may that. May all sentient beings be happy. May sentient beings be free from suffering. So we think, well, I wonder what good that is. What good does that do, you know? So, well, I mean, first of all, before we even get into the substances of these four thoughts, it's really crucial to understand this idea about karma, which underpins everything in Buddhism. That everything we think and do and say, everything is what programs us. Every thought, every action, every word. This is the process of quote unquote creating karma. This is the most fundamental thing in Buddhism. Without understanding this, much of the teachings don't make sense, because the Buddha's emphasis is on what the mind does. So as far as the Buddha is concerned, what goes on in the mind, our mind, is the main source of our happiness and suffering, which is radically different from the way we think in the world, definitely. The more we understand this, the more we understand the nuts and bolts of this process of creating karma, this process of cause and effect, such that everything we think and do and say programs our mind, so seeds in our mind that produce the person we become. This is essentially really the Buddhist idea about karma. It's fundamental to the entire Buddhist worldview. As the Dalai Lama says, karma is like self-creation. And the more we understand it, the more we can understand Buddha's approach to life and how we use the tools in Buddhism. But mind is central, absolutely central. Everything that goes on in our mind, we tend to think, I think, that what goes on in our mind is nobody else's business, and as long as nobody knows about it, it doesn't matter. In other words, we have a sense that it doesn't do anything. It's only if we say or think something that maybe then something happens. But the Buddhist approach is every millisecond of what we think programs us. Nothing goes astray. Nothing can disappear. Nothing can't bring a result. This takes us time to think about because we don't know our minds. We don't know what goes on in there. But the main point, as far as just getting an understanding of how these prayers can be beneficial, is understanding this process of the way the mind works. So there are two things, and this is something we definitely don't think about. So the benefit to oneself of even having a positive thought. And then the other result of having a positive thought is it's the first step in doing something positive. I mean, as Lam Rim says, and I mean, he says, well, no, if we think of the delusions in the mind, our neuroses in the mind, they are we express those with our body and speech. We know that technically, but we don't actually join the dots. We just think I'm this big lump of me plodding through life, and what I think and do and say is like one unitary thing. But the level of the Buddhist practice talks about we must start with controlling our body and speech first. Then we start the real job of being a Buddhist by working on our mind. That's all the wisdom wing. So whatever we do and say and think counts. Everything we think and do and say leaves seeds in our mind. So having one positive thought, we would think, who cares? Big deal, you know? What good does that do? It is programming your mind. As Lam Rim says, we can mold our mind into any shape we like. What we're trying to do is basically mold our mind into the shape of the Buddha's mind, which is a mind that's rid of all the rubbish and full of all the goodness, basically. So what goes on in our mind is stupendously important. We really don't think it matters. We're so convinced that as long as no one knows what's going on in my mind, I can think what I like to think. Meaning we think it doesn't have an effect. But the Buddha says every tiny thought produces the person I become. We really get this. It's an incredible sense of responsibility we have. Because who would want to mold their mind into an angry, depressed, anxious, neurotic, ridiculous person? Who would want to do that? And the idea that we produce ourselves is pretty shocking, because we don't tend to think we do. We think the world produces us. We think we're the victim of circumstances, Every thought counts. So may all sentient beings be happy. Even just that thought is amazing. So forget about whether you do anything to help others. Who do you think is benefiting? It's you turning your mind into the person you want to become, into a kind, compassionate person. When we understand this, then we can really see the benefit of having positive thoughts, of doing prayers, of having aspirations, of visualizing the Buddha, of visualizing purifying ourselves. It's a huge part of our own personal practice. So forget about the benefit that will come eventually to others. What we're doing by having positive thoughts, saying prayers, having aspirations, is producing a marvelous person. I mean, this is not really surprising to us. If you're going to learn music, think about this. If you're going to learn music and become a musician, where do you think you start? You don't start with your hands, you start with your mind. You have to have thoughts that are called musical thoughts, and they have to be coherent, positive musical thoughts. You don't just make up what you think music is if you're going to learn to play like Bach. So you're programming your mind, you're molding your mind into the mind of a musician. And then if you can play the piano, we can deduce that your mind is full of excellent music. So we don't think of it this way, but it's totally logical. So if you're going to be a kind person doing and saying kind things, where do you think it starts? In your mind. So the starting point is the mind, This is the one we're trying to do. This is the one we're trying to transform. So every positive thought does count, and every negative thought counts. When we understand them, this is the meaning of karma, very simply. Then we're going to have a sense of responsibility. Who would want to harm themselves by having angry thoughts? Who would want to harm themselves by being, we have all these habits, they're ancient, but this is what practice is, and having a sense of, so the first one, the wisdom wing, is like having a sense of respect for yourself, that you want to turn yourself into a marvelous person. Don't be ashamed of that. We often miss that in the West. We think, oh, that sounds selfish. We must do that. So the beneficiary of having positive thoughts, who do you think, I remember when I first heard the teachings about bodhicitta, these outrageous levels of compassion that they talk about in the Mahayana path. Outrageous levels. You can't, and I thought, this is too much. How can you talk like this? How can you become like this? It's too much. It seems too inaccessible, And then I remember His Holiness Dalai Lama saying, if you want to help others, practice compassion. If you want to help yourself, practice compassion. But I think in our culture, we think, oh, that sounds selfish. I shouldn't think there's benefit to me. That's a total mistake. We should be so energized by that. We should be so happy just to say these four lines, these four verses, and I'm going to recite them now. They're different from the ones in your notes, as I said. But just having these four thoughts are truly stupendous. I'll just say them. Some we discuss. There's different orders sometimes. But this order I'll say here. So the first one, this is a longer, there's one that are just 4 lines and one that's 4 verses. And it's the attitude of the bodhisattva. He's got this outrageous level of love and compassion for sentient beings, but also he's got this incredible sense of enthusiasm, of effort to never give up. wanting to become a Buddha so they can be a benefit to others. I mean, that level of compassion for others is hard to comprehend. So when I said when I first heard those teachings, and then I heard the Dalai Lama say that, it helped me understand. Okay, I can be a beneficiary of it. Nothing wrong with that. It's really important. So the four verses, the version I know is a bit different. So may all sentient beings may all sentient beings abide in equanimity. We're going to go into this. Free from attachment, anger, and ignorance. May they abide so. And then this outrageous attitude, this courageous attitude of the bodhisattva who takes personal responsibility. I will make this happen. And please, Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could, and there's different order here. Sometimes when we say does one, there's others. So this is either the practice of love or the practice of compassion. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May they be free. I will make this happen. Please, Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could have happiness and its causes. May they have them. I will make this happen. Please, Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were never parted from higher rebirths and liberation's excellent bliss. May they never be parted. I will make this happen. Please, Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. So that's those four thoughts. I mean, they're outrageous. They're unbelievable. So if you think that thoughts aren't important, then you kind of just goes in one ear and out the other. Who cares, you know? But it's so obvious, like with the music, it's so we know it so well when it comes to doing any other activity. You start with the mind. You can't lift a finger to cook anything. You can't make a simple cake without first knowing the mind, the recipe in your mind. You can't play piano without knowing the music in your mind. You can't add things without knowing the math in your mind. It's obvious. It starts with the mind. But I think it's what's fascinating. We know we can mold our mind into the mind of a carpenter, a musician. We are brilliant at it in our culture. We're geniuses. But we do not know we can mold our mind into a happy, wise, content, loving, compassionate person. That's a big surprise to us. But that's the Buddha's expertise. And it's something that shouldn't be surprising to us. We've got this different set of rules in our culture about what happiness means, you know, because we're convinced it's external circumstances that make us. This is a radical difference from the Buddha's view, you know. We produce ourselves. Yes, circumstances make a difference, but we give all the power to circumstances, whereas Buddha says, no, the power belongs to the mind. When we know this, then we're in charge of our lives. So starting with the mind. So what we're trying to do is mold our mind into the mind of a wise, content, fulfilled person. That's the wisdom wing, who is then infinitely compassionate and loving and connected to others. So the first one, equanimity. What's that? The first one. May all sentient beings be abide in equanimity. Well, there's different approaches to that. You know, if we look into the development of the compassion wing, and which is the first stages of it is the development of bodhicitta. So bodhicitta, this is kind of, again, this outrageous state of mind, this paradigm shift that occurs in the mind on the basis of incredible levels of love and compassion. And there's these series of techniques that culminate in bodhicitta. That when you've got this bodhicitta, it's this shift in your mind where now only others occur to you. This way it sounds like mental illness for us in our culture. We can't imagine a person having such levels of love and compassion that you only think of others now. That sounds really quite bizarre to us. It sounds like mental illness because I think our view in our culture in general, our view of a normal person is a person who's got some anger, some attachment, some jealousy, some love, some compassion, you know. Some may be more love and compassion than others, some may be more anger and jealousy than others. But we tend to think ourselves as set in stone. But the idea, which is the Buddha's approach, that you can utterly rid your mind of all the neuroses, that's really quite radical for us. In fact, I remember one woman in one class, and it was really understandable. She laughed when she heard that. She said, that sounds like mental illness. Because these are our assumptions, I think. So it's really quite important. We want to understand what he's teaching, to understand what he's saying. You know? I mean, I repeat this all the time, but the word Buddha, the etymology of that word is very delicious. Bud implies the utter eradication from our minds of all neuroses, all ego, all fears, all sense of separateness, all anger, all depression, all anxiety. This is an insane idea. This is exactly Buddha's view. But our trouble is because we hear it as religion, not as psychology, then we just sort of push it into the sky, you know. But this is exactly what he's saying. And where this view comes from isn't the sky, it's from his own experience. He has found that this is the possibility for sentient beings. We can do this, we can achieve it. That's what Buddhism is, methods to achieve it. That's the wisdom wing. Then the compassion wing, we can develop to perfection. This is implied by Da, Buddha. We can develop to perfection. This is the bodhisattva path, all the virtues, all the goodness. So even these words, you know, neuroses and depression and anxiety, and then all the goodness, this division of the contents of our mind, this is unique to the Buddhist psychological model. We don't think like this in modern psychology. Negative thoughts, positive thoughts. It sounds like judgment. But this is the Buddhist analysis. This is why we need to study the Buddhist view of the mind, you know. So the Buddhist view is these neuroses are not at the core of our being. They do not define us. They're not intrinsic. They say that they're adventitious. They therefore can be removed. And that's the development of, that's what the achievement of your nirvana is, your liberation from suffering and its causes. It's when you finally rid the mind of these delusions. Finally, when you realize the absence of the intrinsic I, realize emptiness. Then when you've achieved the wisdom eventually. And then on the basis of that, you combine it with bodhicitta, this outrageous shift in the mind, where now only others exist for you. And your job, no matter how long it takes, is to become a Buddha so you can be of benefit to each one of them. This is the idea, Buddha. That's the goal. Try to mold our mind into the mind of a Buddha. So in the compassion wing, one of the very first practices, the next stage of practice after the wisdom wing, is where we abide by the laws of karma and then work on our minds. Here, we continue to work on our minds, but in reference to growing these qualities, to growing love, compassion, great compassion, and eventually bodhicitta. So the very first step in these, the very first technique that we use is to cultivate what they call equanimity. Let's look at that. So in this practice, you're doing it for yourself. You're trying to accomplish equanimity in your own mind. But here the prayer is, the aspiration is, may all other sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of attachment, ignorance, and aversion. So these are, as we know from the wisdom wing, these are the three root delusions, the basis for the Buddha of all the neurotic states of mind. All the others are rooted in these three. You know? So what does this mean? Be free of attachment, ignorance, and hatred, anger, for example. Well, these three poisons, we learned all about this back in the wisdom wing. The three poisons, the three toxic emotions. So ego grasping ego grasping, this colloquial term for the root delusion, mat-ripa, this primordial ignorance that causes us to misconstrue the very fundamental nature. It's the deepest delusion in the mind. When we realize emptiness, that's when we've eradicated this one. But there's an aspect of ignorance here that's also kind of like, as a result of this, it causes us to be very dull and narrow-minded and very fundamentalist. Ignorance. Then on the basis of this ignorance, you've got the two other main delusions, and attachment and aversion. These words are so simple for us, but these for the Buddha are profound. As Lam Rim says, I can tell you about attachment for one whole year. We'll never begin to understand it until we've gone deeply into our own mind, unpacked it, unraveled it, deconstructed it. It's got incredibly subtle levels. It's a huge one for the Buddha. And effectively, in the Four Noble Truths, Buddha would say that's the main source of suffering of all sentient beings. Which, of course, is a shock to us. Who would have thought something called attachment is that, And on the basis of attachment is emotional hunger, this over-exaggeration, this distorted exaggeration of the deliciousness of other people, objects, things, cakes, handbags, human beings, bodies, music, you name it. Over-exaggeration of the delicious qualities of those things, and an over-exaggeration of their capacity to make me happy. In fact, a belief that they are the cause of my happiness. This kind of intense emotional hunger that over-exaggerates the deliciousness of the things. That runs our show, that drives every one of us. No matter how much goodness and virtue we have, until we're highly evolved beings, that's going to be there, informing our decisions. So a second attachment doesn't get what it wants, that's aversion. That can be anything from most volatile anger to just annoyance, irritation, upset, all the way to depression. Whole spectrum. We run between these two 1,000 times a day, more. It's huge, you know. And then here in the compassion wing, the three objects of these three delusions are friends, enemies, and strangers. I mean, these are such simple words, but you think about it, there's no fourth category on this planet. All sentient beings, ants, dogs, you know, ex-husbands, pedophiles, rats, cockroaches, you name it, sentient beings that we can see, the animals and the humans and the bugs, they're divided for us. Every being in the universe has their group of friends, the objects of attachment, objects of aversion, and 99.999% of the rest are objects of indifference, which is one of the functions of this ego grasping, one of the functions of this ignorance. This runs the universe. It's so clear. It's almost so simple, it's embarrassing, you know. There's no fourth category of sentient beings. There are those we are attached to, who appear divine to us. And even as I'm talking, visualize to the left in front of you, your beloveds, those you're attached to, you know. Attachment makes them look more delicious than they really are. Then they got the group. So they're the ones who do it. They're the ones who fulfill my needs. They fulfill my attachment. As long as you fulfill my attachment, you're in the friend category, you know, roughly speaking. Think of it this way. And then when you proactively stop fulfilling my wishes, then you move to the enemy category. We might not use that word, but it's a convenient word for the objects of aversion. And we might say, oh, I don't have anybody I don't like. That's not true. You might not have many people you hate, but there are people who irritate us, annoy us, upset, whose music we don't like, whose politics we don't like. Everyone's got somebody. All the creatures, look at them, you know. You put the pussycat and the friend enemy in the friend category. You put the rat in the enemy category. Of course you do. This is your pet rat. And then stranger are those who've neither harmed us nor helped us, which of course is the vast majority of all beings on the planet. Think about it. Think about it. The vast majority of all beings on the planet are strangers to us, and because they have neither harmed nor helped us, we are then indifferent. So this sounds kind of brutal, but think about it. It's absolutely true. There are those we are close to who we think about all the time. There are those we do not like, and we think about them all the time as well, unfortunately. And the rest we couldn't care. They don't even arise in our mind. They don't even come into our consciousness. So of course we take this for granted. This is normal human behavior. Not human, it's normal all beings' behavior. Ants and dogs have their friends, enemies, strangers, monkeys, you name it. Everybody. We have those we're attached to, who think like we do, who look like we do, who act like we do, or who fulfill my needs. We are together in a group, and we agree with certain things. There are those who have aversion for who harm me, and then those who do neither. That's it. So, I mean, we should be embarrassed, actually. So shocking and so self-centered. It's unbelievable. I think the whole world is like that. But that's how it is. And we don't question, do we? We don't question. We take this as an absolute given. Well, here, in this level of the teaching, we deal with the three poisons right back in the wisdom wing. We're mainly looking at the objects of attachment, aversion, and ignorance in terms of the things, like music and sex and food and whatever it is, you know, the outside objects. But here it's sentient beings. So what we're trying to do in this method of accomplishing bodhicitta, the first of these, and there are different groupings of the two main techniques. They call them the 6 causes and 1 effect, or the 7 point something or other. There's another method, both of which culminate in bodhicitta. It's called like exchanging self for others, or one of those, you know, so it's a more dramatic one. There's a combination that the Monka Rinpoche talks about in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand that has 11 techniques, combines these two. There's a series of meditations one would go through, each one leading to the next, that culminate finally in bodhicitta. So the essence of what we're trying to accomplish on the compassion wing is all the positive qualities, and they can be summarized as love and compassion. Love and compassion. So the 4 immeasurables, the first is we aspire, we wish that all sentient beings have equanimity. The next one is we wish that they will be free of suffering and its causes, and that's cultivating compassion. May you not suffer, that's compassion. The next one, may all beings be happy and have its causes, that's cultivating what's called love. So they're the essence of all the virtues in the Buddhist approach. You think about it. Love is the delight that someone be happy. Compassion is the wish they stop suffering. We can see that, you know, and all the other virtues come as a result, we can see. And the starting point is equanimity in terms of developing it oneself. Here are the aspirations that may others had it. But here, when we look at our own self, we need to cultivate this equanimity. So this is kind of intense. Just analyze carefully what it means, because it's quite precise. These words, they're general English terms, equanimity, but it's got a very specific definition here. And that's a really vital point when we listen to the teachings. We're very wishy-washy when it comes to developing love and compassion. We don't think it needs much precision. But these words are very precisely defined. They're referring to very precise states of mind. We need to be quite clear. As I always say, the level of clarity and precision and depth of analysis we know we need, even just to be a good cook, not to mention a musician or a physicist, is exactly what is needed to do the work on our own mind. Quite precise, quite detailed, quite, detail, precise detail. Because we have thousands of thoughts in there, and we're trying to learn to become in control of them and know them and cultivate the positive ones and lessen the neurotic ones. We have to identify them. So let's look at equanimity as a quality that we want to cultivate for ourselves, And this is the beginning of the compassion wheel. So as I'm talking, just visualize to the left in front of your beloved, person you're attached to right now. And then in the middle, right in front of you, eyeball to eyeball, a person whom you have aversion for. And that could very likely be the person you're attached to last year, who gave you up for a younger version. And now they're in your enemy category. You can't stand the sight of them. We all know this. And over to the right, a person whose face you know just enough to put them there, but about whom you are completely indifferent because they've neither harmed you nor helped you. Therefore, they're quite distant, as we're discussing. So equanimity is a very precise state of mind. There's a level of equanimity, they use the word differently in the earlier stages. In the wisdom wing part of the path, we're trying to cultivate equanimity within ourselves, having practiced, having worked on your body, speech, and mind, having disciplined yourself, having lived in vows, having done lots of inner work, you become more stable. You lessen your attachment, lessen your anger, lessen your neuroses. So your mind has more equanimity within yourself. You're more stable. That's that equanimity. Here, it's quite a different one. Equanimity here, precisely, is referring to the state of mind that recognizes that enemy, friend, and stranger are equal to each other from one point of view. They're equal to each other. They might be equal in other ways too, but the point here is quite precise, that the friend, the enemy, and the stranger, the one you adore, the one you can't stand, and the one who bores you to tears, they are equal to each other from one point of view. They each want to be happy, and they each do not want to suffer. This is equanimity, precisely. And it's massively difficult to get because the logic ego uses now is completely ridiculous. I mean, right now, the logic we have for why I want my beloved to be happy, that's what love is. I want my beloved to be happy. It's such an assumption when you love your child, for example. There is love there. There's no question. There's love is enormous. The affection and love and the delight in their happiness and the wish that they be happy. There's no question in parents who do have that love. There's no doubt it's called love. But what we don't see, what we don't distinguish in our psychology, we do, but we don't join the dots like this one. We don't see how it's limited and polluted by attachment. I mean, this is the kind of the classic story of a mother, the mother. Possessive, one of the qualities of attachment is possessiveness, isn't it? One of the qualities of attachment is control. You try to make them do what you want. I mean, that's the classic one of the mother, isn't it? Trying to manipulate the child to get them to do exactly what they want. We know that one as children, and we probably know it as parents as well. If you've been a parent, you are a parent. That's attachment. Attachment, first of all, attachment. I mean, first of all, that person came to your womb by no accident. No one put them there. They come running like a magnet. They died in their past life, and the karmic seed that was triggered from the past, from their own virtue, programmed to run to your womb. The moment you hopped into bed with Fred, or when you went and bought the sperm, or whatever you did these days, people do things differently, don't they? I mean, isn't it? Do things very differently now. So that consciousness ran to that egg and sperm, and that's an interesting point because people often, there's a discussion now in Buddhism whether the consciousness runs into the egg and sperm in the petri dish, or whether it waits until it gets into the womb. And I've asked different lamas, and they have different views about it. It's very interesting. One view is that consciousness cannot go there until it's in the womb, which means you can ship all those frozen embryos down the toilet. But another Lama told me, no, the consciousness can go into the egg and sperm that's in the petri dish, which means it's a sentient being. So think twice before you put it down the toilet. Anyway, there's these interesting discussions. I'm sure they didn't have these in the time of the Buddha. So anyway, so there's this person who came to your womb, okay? And that means they've got some strong history with you from the past. This is the Buddha's view. They've got some intense history from you. I mean, such intense history that they actually go into your body. I mean, that is so intense, I can't believe it, you know? So there's a strong karmic connection for a start. That's that one. Intense history you've got with that child. This is just giving the example of the mother, you know. Then you've got, depending on the karma you've got with each other, I mean, some children and mothers get along beautifully until the day they die, isn't it? We know that. They're harmonious, they love each other, the child adores their mummy, the mummy is not so possessive, whatever makes you happy, sweetheart. We know there are mummies and daughters like that. Let's say daughter, give example. But we know there are tortured stories of mothers and children, you know, unbelievably, unbearably painful stories. So one is the karmic connection. This is beside equanimity now. One is the karmic connection you've got with that person, but then the quality of your karma between them. So you've got lots of virtuous karma between each other. You've each been kind to each other, you've each been patient, you've each been loving, you haven't abused each other, then you're going to get along beautifully. You're going to be loving and kind to each other, and the child will appreciate the mother, respect the mother, love the mother, and the child, you know, the mother won't suffocate the child. That's amazing, and you see that sometimes. So the quality of the karmic connection is that's the practice, you know. Let's say some mothers go crazy with their children. They want to murder them. I mean, I'd always say if I had a child, they'd be a dead child. There's no question. Just as well I didn't have one. Husband as well, there'd be a dead husband if I had one of them as well. So we can see the intensities of the karmic connection and then of the karma between you, whether it's virtuous or non-virtuous. It doesn't come from nowhere, you know. But let's just say the attachment is there, masses. Typically, the attachment is one of the signs. This is fascinating. The Lama say this is so kind of it's just outrageous. A sign of attachment is when you think of the thing or the person when they're not there. That's a sign of attachment. Well, look at us with food or whatever it is, video games or jumping on girls, whatever it is, you know. I mean, isn't it? It's in the mind when the object's not there. That's quite shocking. It's quite sobering. So anyway, attachment, I mean, for the mother, there's no doubt about that. I mean, my mother had 7 babies, and I know she had us in her mind until the day she died. There's absolute certainty. Of course, not just because of attachment, because of love as well. So there's attachment there. And that means that baby looks more, this sounds very cruel, but this is how it works. That child will look much more divine to you than they actually are. I mean, if I show you a picture of 1,000 babies, you'll recognize your baby in one instant. So it's got a halo around it, it's shining and vibrating, and you'll recognize your baby immediately. You understand me? Not being rude, it's just attachment. You attach to handbags, it'll be the same. You know, it'll look divine to you. That's attachment, it's its function. One of its most immediate functions is to exaggerate the deliciousness of the object. So of course that's there with babies, mummies and their children. And in a sense, it's just as well. I mean, the bodhisattva path you can use as attachment. I'm glad my mother had attachment for us. I mean, look at the poor mothers who don't have attachment for their babies. Look at that one. It's agony every day. You can't love them. You say, I can't love this person, because it means you've got no attachment for them. No wonder mothers kill their children or forget that they leave them in the car, you know? There's no attachment. So without attachment, love is very limited. Can you imagine having as much love? Love for that baby is stupendous. And this is the interesting point, because the attachment is there. The love we have now is contingent upon the attachment. So look at the child you don't love so much. It's because you haven't got much attachment for them. In fact, you might have aversion for them. So look how hard it is to be kind to them. Look at ourselves in our ordinary life. The person you don't like that much, you're not attached to. It's so hard to be kind to them. But when you've got attachment, love is easy. So at least be happy you've got the love. It's our saving grace. But why it's so easy to love your baby, love your brand new boyfriend, is because your heart is wide open and this person looks like they're divine straight from heaven. So love is easy. So the point is here, we've got attachment, And of course, we do have love. We do want that person to be happy, but it's mainly because we're attached. As we would say, it's got strings attached, you know. As Robert says that love is unstable. So this is meaning really crucial. We have to distinguish between the love and the attachment. We say in England and Australia, they're like chalk and cheese. They're totally different states of mind. But as far as we're concerned, they come together. And so we conflate them. We assume attachment is love, and we assume love is attachment. Because you only want to be happy, those you're attached to, and you're only attached to those you want to be happy. So we really need to see this. This is the point in Buddhist psychology, to see clearly the distinction between attachment and love. It's tremendous. And when we can start to see it, we can really navigate our own mind and know how to be with people, you know. So when we're attached to somebody, it is easy to love them because they appear so divine to you. But look what happens if it's the boyfriend. Look what happens when the attachment starts to fade. You know, you move in together. Suddenly you see him naked and he farts in the sheets instead of the toilet. And suddenly, I mean, we're all human beings, you know. And suddenly your attachment starts to fade. And you wonder who this person is next. Wake up in the morning, you're shocked. Who's this ugly person or boring? Because, I mean, attachment only goes to two places, aversion or indifference. There's no other option. You either become indifferent to this boring person or you want to kill them. Now, you understand my point. Attachment, aversion, and ignorance are really seemingly simple, but they're really profound to understand, you know. So it's easy to have love. But love now is contingent on attachment completely. So what we're trying to do here, starting in equanimity, before we begin to grow love and attachment and bodhicitta, is begin to at least get out of the equation. And you know, these three people you're visualizing right now, step out of it and realize that these are three separate people having nothing. Forget your relationship with them. They're three separate people in themselves who are absolutely equal to each other in their wish to be happy, in their wish not to suffer. This is something that's fundamental in Buddhism. Buddha says every living being is just driven by the wish to be happy and driven by the wish to not suffer. This is fundamental. So that is the equanimity we're discussing here. For ourselves, we're talking here for ourselves now. We must have this equanimity, step out of this equation, get ourselves out of it, and see this person, this adorable person on the left, the horrible ex-husband in the middle, and the boring person on the right. And of course, because right now we see them through the lenses of our delusions. We see everyone and this is the part that should be depressing to us, we see the entire universe in terms of their ability to fulfill my needs. If they fulfill my needs, I adore them. If they don't, they're ugly, I don't like them. And if they do neither, I couldn't care. This is it. This is kind of profound, you know. We're all driven by it. It's sort of natural, so natural. Everyone's like it. Lions, tigers, monkeys, you name it. We're trying to go beyond this. This is extraordinary. And this is the starting point. This is the foundation. Without this, you can't grow stable love, compassion, great compassion, not to mention not get bodhicitta. And we need to use logic to argue with these misconceptions. You know, they're deep in our bones. So the aim in equanimity isn't to kind of think they're all the same, therefore I might as well move in with, I might as well go and swap my baby with your baby. That's not the point. You've got a karmic connection with your baby. You've got a strong karmic connection, you know, with your baby. So you have a responsibility to that baby. There's no doubt about that. Your history with that person. You haven't got history with the one next door. You might have from 5,000 lives ago, but you can't remember it. You know, that's not the karma now. So this equanimity is to step out and start to sort of remove the attachment, remove the aversion, remove the ignorance, and see these three people from their own point of view. Our mothers would say, put yourself in their shoes. That's profound. That's the fundamental idea of equanimity. They're equal from this one point of view. So what's the point of this? Because we're trying to shift. This is becoming, we're shifting now the basis for why we want to develop love and compassion. Love is, may you be happy. May you not suffer is compassion. And we're trying to cultivate these. So we've got to first recognize that each person wants to be happy. Each person doesn't want to suffer. And that becomes the basis of love and compassion. Not, if they make me happy, I'll love them, which is how it is now. And if they don't make me happy, I stop loving them. When that boyfriend, the child maybe, even children reject their mothers, and the mother still won't often give up loving their child. That happens. But usually you give up loving the ex-boyfriend. You give up loving the ex-husband. That's unusual if you're still loving them. Some people do. but usually they're finished, and now they're in the enemy category, isn't it? So the logic of equanimity is to step back out of it, stop seeing them in reference to yourself, because enemy, friend, and stranger is in reference to you. I mean, we really should be embarrassed. It's quite shocking. It's so self-centered. It's unbelievable. But you see the entire universe through the lenses of whether or not they fulfill your needs. It's extraordinary, actually. We should be embarrassed. That's samsara, isn't it? So this is huge what we're trying to do. Step out of it. But then it gets complicated. So then I've got, you know, I don't know who let's say Mr. Trump. People love to hate Mr. Trump, isn't it? Well, some people love to love Mr. Trump as well. Doesn't matter. Let's say you didn't like Mr. Trump. But he's in the enemy category. So then you think, well, Robina, Mr. Trump wants to be happy. He doesn't want to suffer. And the first thing we say is, what do you mean he wants to be happy? He doesn't deserve it. And this we can speak about for the rest of the week, I promise. This one, deserve, is so heavy. It's deep in our bones. That's the heaviness of attachment. I will love you as long as you keep doing what I want. And I'm sorry, but this is brutal, but it's how it is in relationships. If that husband starts being mean to you, starts beating you, starts, farting in the sheets every day, suddenly doesn't take care of you any longer, starts cheating on you, of course you're going to be angry. Of course you're going to be devastated. And of course your love will turn off like a tap. Of course it will. This is normal human behavior. Because love, the wish that you be happy, is contingent upon you doing what my attachment wants. It sounds brutal. It sounds like it's not fair almost, But this is what we have to look at. So what we're trying to do, yes, leave that hubby. Yes, he does cheat on you. That's a fact. Yes, he's unkind to you now. Leave him, very intelligent. Put him in the, but don't put him in the enemy category. This is the point. Leave him, because it's not working anymore, but still recognize the fundamental humanity, due to your karma, which you learned back in junior school, in the wisdom wing, due to karma, this is happening. So you take responsibility. And you learn to see beyond the actions he did to you, beyond that, within his own bones, you see him, you realize he's driven by the wish to be happy. He's driven by the wish not to suffer. This is something so raw, so fundamental, that it's hard to get to it because we're full of all these other projections, The first one we say is he doesn't deserve it. How dare you say the ex-husband wants to be happy? Look what he did to me. He doesn't deserve it. That's very automatic for us. So this is attachment. Attachment is this needy, hungry part of us that demands that a person fulfills my needs. But that's what it's doing, although it sounds brutal. And when they don't, we're outraged. We recognize all this. And then we think, well, it's not fair. What's put on about, This is normal, isn't it? Yes, it's normal, but it's called samsara, Just to get to this point where you recognize these three people are equal from that one point of view, this is already tough, It's hard to see it. Especially when people really are horrible, say politicians, at the moment everybody's hating Mr. Putin, for example, let's say. It's very hard to have this view. It feels silly almost. Look what he's doing. What do you mean he wants to be happy? He doesn't deserve to be happy. This is so strong in our minds. But none of this is the point. Deserve is not the point. It's not the issue here. It's bare bones, fundamental, that every being is driven by the wish to be happy and not suffer. We've got to try and find the truth in that. And then strip away all these other assumptions and projections. It's not easy. This equanimity itself, this is the first step, the foundation in the development of genuine love and compassion. Because the point for the Buddha, of course, on the Mahayana path, love and compassion we understand. We have bucket loads of it, but only for a selected group. Usually for the friends, the ones who've got the politics we've got, who like the music we like, who do what I want, whom we're attached to. We have lots of love and compassion, no doubt. What about 99.99999% of the universe? The whole point of the Buddhist, on the Mahayana path, we have the capacity to love and have compassion for every living being. So equanimity is the starting point, the foundation. Without this foundation, you cannot develop. It's not stable. So it's a huge one already. I think it's time for questions. Some kind of questions. Anybody on Zoom? Any questions? Any question at all? If not, it's really okay. No questions. Yeah. I can continue. Yes. Hello, dearest one. Happy to see you. Very well.
Good to see you, Venerable Robina. Good to see you. Everything you're talking about, of course, makes me think.
Somebody on Swan, darling, somebody's talking on Zoom as well.
Surely. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Who is talking? Who was it? Put your hand up so I can see from the distance. Who was talking on the Zoom? Put your hand up on Zoom so I can see you. Who was just talking? What's happened?
I think it was Aileen.
Who?
Yes, I was talking.
Oh, darling, can you wait a second?
Surely.
We've got a question here, but I want you to make sure you all hear the questions. I want to hear the questions. What? So they can't hear him talking. What? When I do Zoom, everybody hears what I'm saying without a microphone. What is the problem? And we can all hear them on the, and we can all hear them. So, is the computer on?
It's coming through your head.
Well, let's put it on here. So when I can turn the sound off, and then when you give me the computer.
Let's see.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's connected to the camera.
Oh, I see.
Let's see how
We
far.
we come and pull the cord out. I mean, it's got enough power, is it, for now?
We'll find out.
Huh? Just give me the computer. Yes. Look at that. Now I can see you. Now let's get the volume. Are we on? Where are we? What are you doing?
Let me just make-
Volume on.
Can
That's
someone
it.
can someone talk on the?
Yeah, talk to me, somebody on, you talk. to see-
Hello, I'm
No, it's
talking right now.
better now. We can hear each other.
Sounds really good. Yeah, sounds really good.
Yeah, it's much better.
Much better.
Talk to me, Eileen. Eileen can go first. Wait on. This is better. Oh, I feel so comfortable. I'm so used to Zoom these last 3 years. I'm not used to you real people looking at me. It's weird, you know. Okay, talk. Come on, Eileen. Talk to me,
Oh.
darling.
Thank you. Thank you. Everything you're talking about tonight, of course, when I'm watching TV, and I'm sure we all go through this, we see what's happening in Ukraine. We have very deep responses and reactions. And then I find myself saying terrible things like, you know,
course.
take Putin out. And I get very, so if we could, you know, I feel almost ashamed because I think, well, all the things that I'm reading and trying to do, I'm losing it in a brief moment
That's
because
it.
Putin wants to be happy too. It's hard for me to grasp that.
I know exactly.
So
This is the point, Eileen. So listen to me. So listen, this is the thing. This is why. Are we doing well?
No,
You're
keep
okay?
going, keep going, sorry.
What?
I'm gonna turn your camera on.
Oh, no.
Oh, it's good. Oh, sorry.
It's all good. So listen, happy? This is now, I feel a lot better now. And I feel like I'm grounded now suddenly. Over there is too weird. Now here I can see, and I look at myself, now you can see me. Okay, now listen. This is why, Eileen, these words sound simple. We love compassion and love. Many people become Buddhists because they love the idea of compassion. But when we start to hear these things, it blows our minds because it's levels of depth of compassion that we have not contemplated. Do you understand? So this is why Dalai Lama says compassion is not enough. We've got to have the wisdom wing, Eileen. So if we are trying to be good Buddhists, and I know you are, if we can't apply first karma and know why in the name of God all this stuff is happening and genuinely apply that to stabilize our mind and then to understand delusions, if we haven't done the wisdom wing, honey, there is no reason we should have compassion to Mr. Putin. There's no reason not to want to kill him immediately. And that's the problem. So if we don't apply karma and the mind, darling, this stuff is just airy fairy talk. And that's what's heavy. We have to know why it is happening. This is why we all go crazy. Why the main suffering we have in the world when bad things happen just to ourselves, our first response is, why is this happening to me? And why we go mad is because we have no answer. So we know perfectly well, if we're trying to be good Buddhists, trying to study Buddhism, karma is the first thing we have to learn. Every living being is experiencing every millisecond the results of their own past actions naturally. Until we begin to take this on board, we can't begin to go to this level of compassion. It's just like a joke. So that's the first one, Eileen. When we understand that, we know why it is happening. And this is the real point of the bodhisattvas. Then we will have enormous compassion for both Ukrainians and the Russians.
Yes.
Without that, there's no basis, darling. It's just sentimental rubbish, you know,
Thank you.
isn't it?
Good. Yes. Yes.
That's
absolutely.
And then still, it doesn't mean you don't go off to Ukraine and try to help. It doesn't mean you know, but we have to have the bigger picture. This compassion wing is in reference to the bigger picture.
In other words, a Buddhist worldview. Is that what you
That's
mean?
right, darling, precisely, Eileen. And it's not comfortable sometimes. That's why our level of love and compassion in the world is very sentimental. We only have compassion for the poor victims. They say the bodhisattvas, who are these outrageous beings who've done all this work, they have more compassion for the harmers than the harmed. This is shocking for us. Why? Because the harmed are finishing their karma and the harmers are just beginning outrageous levels of suffering. So without this view, there's no really sound basis for the levels of love and compassion that we're going to be talking about these 2 days. Do you understand, darling?
I do. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, come on, dearest one.
Hi. You mentioned prayer from a Buddhist perspective.
Yes.
And, you know, frequently in a theistic, you know, tradition,
Yes.
you know, prayer is either to establish a relationship with a deity or
To request the help.
petition
Yes, that's right.
for outcome.
Yes.
And so in a non-theistic or tradition like Buddhism,
Yes.
where does the prayer?
Okay, let's look at it. Exactly. Did you get the question, you people on Zoom? You heard him? He wants to know where prayer fits in the Buddhist view, because the typical view in the theistic religions is your, as he said, establishing relationship or you're petitioning help. That's our typical view of prayer. And commonly people ask that question, well, if you don't believe in creator, who are you praying to, they will say, because the assumption is you're asking for help. Well, in Buddhism, first, it's both, exactly the same. So, but the point is, this kind of prayer is just aspirations. May all beings be, it's making the strong thought in our own mind, one, to help me cultivate compassion and love so that eventually I can practice compassion and love. So it's really one's own personal. So this level of prayer is your own personal, individual mental practice to help you become loving and compassionate. You're not asking anybody to do anything. You're wanting, may others, I mean, if every day, you're a nutritionist and you're thinking, may everybody learn about nutrition. You're coming from compassion. You're going to become a better nutrition every day, right? May all people be healthy. And then you want that, may I do it? So it's giving you the courage. This is a very specific aspiration that you become like this. May I make it happen? May I do it? It's the courage of the bodhisattva. This has got nothing to do with petitioning anybody, but lots of the prayers are, of course, because we understand what a Buddha is a being who's gone beyond delusions, whose mind pervades the universe, who has infinite compassion, infinite wisdom, and who's powerfully capable. We have to keep remembering that. It's too abstract for us to think of a Buddha as a powerful being. Buddhas, Dakinis, Buddhas, the bodhisattvas are powerful beings whose minds pervade the universe, who have the lowest level bodhisattva can manifest their mind in 100 different bodies simultaneously. And this is the dependent arising of prayer is if you're this nutritionist, you've got the capability, right? You've trained yourself, you've got the wisdom. But if I don't come and knock on your door and ask you to help me, what good are you to me? I have to ask you to help. So that's a major part of prayer is requesting the Buddhas to benefit, requesting the Buddhas to protect, requesting the Buddhas to help me. Totally that, absolutely.
Okay.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, and developing relationship, absolutely. I mean, this is where, because we're so used to religion being a little bit abstract, I think, and God, the idea of God's okay. But suddenly you think of millions of Buddhas and bodhisattvas, it all seems a bit kind of complicated. But it's a bit similar to the saints if you're a Catholic. Were you a Catholic? No, a Catholic? Were you a Catholic? No.
Evangelical.
Oh, okay. Well, you had the saints too, didn't you? You didn't pray to much of the saints. No, we Catholics.
We recognize it in the gospel.
No, I know, but we Catholics prayed to everybody. We prayed to ladies, gentlemen, all kinds of people. I love the saints. I loved Our Lady, It's just very similar. The difference is you can become one.
Yes.
And part of that is your method for becoming one,
In other words, if I ask you every day about nutrition, and eventually I will also become a nutritionist, you're helping me become a nutritionist. It's a dependent arising, you know. I've got to ask you for help. And the more I ask you for help, the more you'll help me because you're qualified. Same with the Buddhas. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Anybody else? Yes, yes. Come on. Go. Yes, darling. Good.
Yeah. In the chat.
Oh, you read it to me. Who is it? Who's got the question?
Hi, it's me. How are you?
Darling, you talk to me.
Sure. So my question is, if I took a decision, which was a personal decision based on astrology, does it mean that that decision happened in my life also because of karma? If it's a bad marriage, like if it's toxic.
I see. No. You know, I mean, the whole idea of karma, I mean, this is a whole other discussion, isn't it? I mean, it's like, if we don't understand this properly, and it's quite, yeah. Karma is this really simple rule as far as Buddha is concerned, that every single tiny, like, okay, use the analogy, and they do, Buddha uses the analogy of growing things, of seeds and fruits, you know. We know logically, don't we, that if you understand even a little bit about botany, you know that every tiny thing you see in your garden, you know it came from a seed. Would that be true? You just know it, don't you?
Yes.
Well, your life, darling, is your garden. And every tiny thing that manifests in your life, every tiny little good thing, every tiny bad thing is necessarily the fruit of a seed you planted. That's the principle. So, of course, the answer is yes. Of course it is. Everything is. All the good as well as the bad. We tend to only worry about the bad stuff. I've never yet met a person who says, Robina, why do good things happen? For the same reason as bad things. You sowed a seed. The weeds and the flowers come from seeds. So that's the principle behind everything. So yes, darling, own it. Do you understand?
Thank you.
But get rid of him.
Yes.
Okay, chuck him out. You don't just live with, stick with, you're not, karma's changeable. All right?
It's, you're not going to like my answer. It's because of my child. I cannot leave him.
Oh, it's a child, is it?
Yeah.
What? Oh, of course you can if you want to. I'm just being provocative here. I mean, but okay, darling, put it this way. That's good. That can be very courageous, or you can be a victim. So don't be a victim if you decide it. You decide it for a good reason, and you have courage, and you make it your firm decision for a good reason, and then you'll find some space in that to be happy. Don't do it as a martyr. Do you understand me? Can you do that?
Yes.
Can you do it bravely and strongly?
Yes.
And carve out your own, darling.
Okay, or try and change my mind. I'm stuck between these two decisions.
I know
I should leave.
There's only
change my
two
mind.
options, sweetheart. There are two options: leave or stay. But either one you choose it, and then you'll be happy. It's not easy, but either one you choose, you make it your decision, and that'll give you power. But if you do it as a victim, you'll go crazy, darling.
Okay.
You understand?
Yes.
Brave. Just aspire every day to make the right decision. Don't force it. Don't kind of chew on it like a dog with a bone. Just have this aspiration. As His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, always aspire to do what is most beneficial. And that thought will guide you to make the right decision. Okay?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Be brave. Who else? Anyone else there?
Yeah, regarding equanimity, I've always kind of thought, maybe this is semantics, but I've always thought of it as like, I think my needs, wants, desires are the most important.
I can't quite hear you, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. Just while you're talking, that's a bit better.
Yeah, I always think that like my needs, wants, and desires are the most important needs, wants, and desires. And I thought of equanimity as being like everyone thinks that, and therefore my needs are actually no more important than anyone else's needs.
Yeah.
Is that semantics or?
No, I think, no. Okay, it's an interesting one. Okay, put it this way. The starting point from the Buddhist perspective, our starting point before we start to practice is we're naturally more attached, we're self-centered, we're miserable, we're angry, we're jealous to whatever degree, okay? Join the universe. So from that perspective, then we think my needs are more important and we get really resentful and how dare everybody else have needs as well? And we can't hear it very well. In other words, it's too advanced to realize that other people have needs as well. That's why the wisdom wing has to come first. And you've got to realize what your neuroses are, what your deal is, and you learn to take care of yourself by giving up your attachment and anger and jealousy. And in that sense, you fulfill your own needs in a positive way. Now you can begin to put other needs first. We can't just rush ahead if we're still miserable and depressed ourselves to just, you know, like your mother says, think of other people, you know, it's too me, we can't handle it. You've got to know where you're at. So don't even think of other people's needs yet until we've begun to work on ourselves. Because it's true, in the end, when you're a bodhisattva, you've completely changed the whole thing. It's only others now, but you can't leap to that. That's too advanced. We've got to deal with ourselves first. Do you understand what I'm saying? Often we think, oh, I've got to be compassionate and forgive the ugly old ex-wife or something. Don't know. Work on yourself first. Deal with your own pain, your own misery, your own neuroses. Put yourself together. Then you can begin to have compassion for the other person and see that they've got needs as well. That's why the compassion wing is more advanced. But you're right in principle, yes, but we can't leap to it. Do you understand me?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Good. It's important. Who else? Yes.
I have a sort of follow-up that I was thinking.
Yeah.
Equanimity, right? So you talked about.
Do you mind taking your mask off to talk? I can't hear.
It's around equanimity. So you talked about love and compassion earlier. What are the qualities of equanimity?
Okay, equanimity. No, equanimity is a starting point. In terms of these, there's 11 little techniques. You combine these two systems for getting bodhicitta that they talk about in the texts. There's 11 little specific techniques. Each leads to the next, each more difficult, each more difficult. So the development of actual love and compassion come about 6 and 7 or 8. Here we're talking number 1 technique. So equanimity is a specific attitude in your mind that recognizes that beloved, that ugly one, and that stranger. This is precisely what it is. It's a precise thing. Equal in wishing to be happy and not suffer. That's it. That's equanimity. And that needs masses of work to see that as a truth. Because, I mean, if you have your beloved child there, or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, you have your worst enemy on the planet, and as soon as you hear they're equal in their wish to be happy, we can't even hear the words. It's too hard to hear it because we have so many layers of assumptions stuck on top, you know, and so much. Most of us, the first one is, what do you mean he wants to be happy? He doesn't deserve it. Look what he did to me. So this is because we have enormous attachment that gets really harmed when we get abused and harmed. And we do get abused and we do get harmed by people. So it's a really powerful point to rip away all these assumptions and get to this bare bones fact that the way we see the 3 people now is completely based on our own needs and our own delusions. And it's hard to get past those. Do you understand me?
Yeah, I always thought about it as a removal of
The what?
things. I always thought about it as a removal of emotions to sort of like.
No, not like, they're not really, no, it's not. And this is why we can't leap to this one until we've done the basic work in the wisdom wing about understanding karma and understanding our mind, understanding the 3 poisons, doing all the work of getting renunciation. What is attachment? What is anger? What is jealousy? We've got to do that work first. Now it's easier when we get to sentient beings and do the equanimity one. It's enormously hard otherwise. Do you understand me?
Yeah.
It's not being, no, it's not like indifference. It almost sounds like you've got to stop loving everybody and to see them all as boring. No, nothing like that. It's a powerful recognition that they're all the same in their wish to be happy. And on the basis of this, we can now begin to grow love and compassion for them.
It's incredible.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Good, it's important. What else, people? Anybody else on Zoom?
Robina, may I ask?
Yes.
Could you give some advice as in our day-to-day life, how not to conflate attachment and love?
Not to what conflate? Of course, darling. I mean, we've got the whole week, haven't we? We can 2 hours a day, we might cover some of it. So, okay, the answer to that, how to distinguish between love and attachment is a question, you know. This is the fundamental job of being a Buddhist. And that means we have to understand. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, we have to understand the Buddhist model of the mind. And I mean, this is why most of us don't study it. Most of us love Freud and Jung and the Western model, and nothing wrong with that. It's a different model, you know. But we've got to understand these fundamentals in Buddhism, that the Buddha makes this absolutely clear distinction into 3 categories, all the thousands of states of mind. We've got thousands of thoughts. I mean, so there's those, he divides into precisely 3 categories. There are those that are neurotic, deluded, negative. I mean, Lamia, she's got about 20 synonyms he made up just to help us understand. Deluded, neurotic, unhappy, distorted, exaggerated, and they are rooted in the wrong sense of a self, and they are the source of all suffering and all harm we ever do, ever, to anybody. This is a really precise way of seeing it, and we have to identify those states of mind. They're delusional, they're disturbing and delusional. Disturbing means they're deeply painful, and they're delusional, and this is the part that's difficult to see when we study it in more in depth, that they are basically all rooted in being conceptual stories. Anger is a conceptual story. Jealousy is a conceptual story. Attachment is a conceptual story. Attachment, and they all have one particular job in being disturbing. Check the last time you were anxious, jealous, depressed, they were painful, right? And they have this other crucial function of being distorted, exaggerating conceptions. So attachment over-exaggerates the beauty and deliciousness of just a chocolate cake. Forget the child of the husband. Do you understand me? Over-exaggerates the deliciousness, makes the object actually appear delicious to you. We know this. When you're hungry and your stomach's empty, that cake looks divine. We really believe it is divine, as if you put a spoonful of divineness along with the chocolate and the flour. But attachment, this over-exaggerating deceptual story coming from a misery, coming from emotional hunger, a lack of a sense of not being, a sense of not having enough, a sense of not being enough. Its primordial energy is dissatisfaction, attachment. So the more dissatisfied I am, and we get born with this, the more I'm going to be emotionally hungry, attachment. The more I'll exaggerate the deliciousness of the cake, attachment. The more I will then frantically hunger to get it into the right hole, this one. And when I get it, I'll get happy. All of that's a function of attachment. So when it comes to people, you add possessiveness to it as well. You understand? Manipulate, possessive, demanding, control freak, emotional hunger, all of that is attachment. We know all those emotions. All of that is a function of attachment. Now you have love. If you had only love, you'd be blissful, joyful, unneurotic, undisturbed. You'd be happy. You wouldn't be needy. You wouldn't be anxious. You wouldn't be worried. You wouldn't get anger. You wouldn't be jealous. You'd be blissful and joyful if you only had love. So love is the delight in the other person's happiness. You see them and you delight in them. You want them to be happy, but you also have the wisdom now to know how to make them happy because you've given up attachment. So attachment just pervades everybody's mind. It's primordially deep. It's at the level of assumptions, And then love, any love that is there, amazing, it's our saving grace. If there's anything worthwhile in your relationship with whoever it is, it's because of love, not because of attachment. If there's any misery in it, it's because of attachment, not love. The virtues, love, compassion, the second category, the virtuous states of mind, the valid ones, they're linked to others. Check when you're angry with a person. There's a sense of separateness, isn't there? You're isolated, you're constricted, you're miserable, you're neurotic, they appear horrible to you, you're frantic, you're fear-based. That's anger. Now look at, and when you're loving to a person, you feel connected to them. You feel there's a sense of connectedness. There's like a we there, not a separate me. You're light, you're relaxed, you're easygoing. It's joyful. They're completely different states of mind, darling. But we don't have them. We don't usually have one without the other. And there's any happiness in your life, it's because of love. Any misery is because of attachment. What do you think?
I think when you explain it like that, it's so clear.
That's right.
That any kind of disturbance is that attachment, even though it's mixed with a love.
That's right, precisely. And that's why it's hard to distinguish them, sweetheart. It's so hard. But that's our job. At least theoretically know the difference first, And you can't otherwise. I mean, these words I'm saying just sound very easygoing, but it's from the clear description in the texts of Buddha's teachings of what attachment is, what the delusions are, And of course, in our culture, we think they're normal. And they are normal insofar as everybody's got them. But Buddha's outrageous view is he's found methods to get rid of them. So that's our job, to identify and to learn to work with it and argue with it and refrain from it and give it up. It's very painful. And grow the love instead, Do you understand?
Yeah,
Good.
thank you.
Good, darling. What else, people? Yes.
You have another question?
Good. Talk to me. Say it.
Hi, Venerable. This is Jivraj again. So I
Yeah.
had a follow-up question to my earlier question about being in like an unhappy marriage, in the sense if the husband is not verbally very nice and lies and does these kind of things. So how can I purify this?
I'm trying to find you on the screen. I suddenly can't see you. I don't know why.
Oh, I'm here.
Here you are. So would you say that again, please? Purify what, sweetheart? You can't purify his part. You can only work on yourself. You cannot purify him.
Okay.
That's his business. You have to learn, due to karma, you're with this person. Okay. So you have to, every time anything happens, you have to try to see your mind. You have to see and try to and learn to work with yourself. Learn to, if whatever decision you make, learn to protect yourself, be as clear as possible. And the major one is attachment here is stop expecting him to be different.
Okay.
That's attachment.
That's very hard.
It's a massively hard,
Okay.
darling. That's why you got to be wise and make the right decision. If you've got to, this is where you just got to be clear, protect yourself as much as you can. Try to see how, your own mind, try and see your own mind as much as you can, your own aversion, your own irritation, your own upset, your own, resentment, your own attachment. This is the part that you can work on. This is the part that you can work on, darling. And you have to, again, make this aspiration to do what is most beneficial for the sake of all of you. Have the courage to make that decision. Do you understand me?
Okay. Okay. And in terms of purifying my karma, like what can I do?
Do you do some practice? Do you have a Buddhist practice or not? I'm just curious.
Yes. And that's being tested very badly by this person. I mean, every time I try to be on a certain path, I just
Every
get
time you try what?
derailed
Every
because
time what,
of this.
darling? Every time what?
I try to stick to my practice and, stick to the vows. Like, for example, if I say I'm not going to get angry for 24 hours, or I'm not going to gossip about him for 24
Yes,
hours.
I know. Well, this is the major
doesn't
problem.
happen.
No, I know, but this is the part that if you really can learn to shut your mouth, really learn to shut your mouth first. Don't worry about the getting angry. At least shut your mouth and do not talk about him to other people. That just fuels your own hurt and anger like crazy. And that is a powerful first step, darling. At least shut your mouth. I promise you, if you can do that, that'll lessen your suffering and make things a lot easier for you.
Okay.
Have maybe one person you talk to, if you've got a therapist or somebody you trust, but the reason to talk to them is to help you sort out your mind, not just to vent anger. That won't help you, darling.
Okay. And keep my mouth shut, even if the person is being verbally not nice.
Keep your mouth shut. Absolutely. It's not easy, but darling, as long as you're in this little scenario, you're going to expect it's going to be this way. That's why you've got to make some decisions, sweetheart. Does your child love this man?
Yes, he
Well,
is very attached to him. He's just
I'm
2.5.
sure he is, darling. So then you've got to protect yourself and and get your own space. Do what you can to protect yourself, to control yourself. For your sake, you must.
Yeah, it's affecting my mind quite.
Of course it is. Of course it is, sweetheart. So you should have someone you can talk to, but you've got to, you've got to know what's right for you. You've got to know what you can cope with. You have to make wise decisions, sweetheart.
Sure, thank you. But on the other hand, I'm also thinking the same thing, what you just mentioned, that if I'm on the Buddhist part, then I should be more patient. I should be more...
Okay, don't think of it that way. Don't think of it that should. That's meaningless. You have got to concentrate on working on your mind for your sake. Don't think of being patient and compassionate yet to this person for his sake. You've got to do these things for your sake first. Do you hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
That's the wisdom wing. All right.
Yeah, and just one more thing. I mean, one big reason why I'm not able to leave him is because here in the US, as you know, like if you are not with your husband and you have a child, it has to be like sort of the child will be swinging between him and I, so between us.
That's
I
right.
don't want that. And that's going to be
honey,
really
child,
disastrous.
Sweetheart, I think you got so much. You just got to be so careful and so think about these things and really try to be objective. You need some good people to support you, whom you can talk to, whom you can help, who can help you make wise decisions, sweetheart. You're just going around in circles and you'll go crazy.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. And okay, that's good. Who else then? It's time to go home already, 8:30. Yes, darling Sheila.
So I wonder if you talk a bit about with your partner, your child, a friend. I noticed there's like attachment and aversion for both.
Huge, I know, for the same person. I know, exactly, isn't it? That's what's it. That's the point, isn't it? I mean, we talk about a friend. I mean, so 1 minute you want to kill them, next minute you adore them. I know it's intense, isn't it? It's extraordinary. It all comes out so strongly in relation to one person. It's so true, isn't it? I know, it's just true. What can I say? It's so true, Sheila. This is why, I mean, her you know, this woman's her point. I mean, this is too difficult to be together living. I mean, we're sort of not like saints. If we were saints, we'd maybe manage living to another human with another human being. But living in the same house, in the same bed as one person, for me, this is like demanding too much of ordinary people. I mean, no wonder, I always quoting, but I'm serious. I'm not joking. More than 40% of all women on the planet who get murdered are murdered by the person in the same bed. I'm not surprised, not against men, but ordinary human beings, you know, with attachment and aversion. And it's so intense. I can't imagine you all do it. I mean, if you have a harmonious relationship, then wow, you're very fortunate. Unbelievable. Woo, isn't it? I mean, life is too difficult. I'm not saying you've got to go and be a monk or a nun. I know that sounds weird too, but it's not. And that's why we've got to have your own space at least. I mean, be like the aristocrats, have your own bedroom. At least that, you know, then you can fart in peace. I mean, get my point, you know. But who's got riches enough to have the real estate, you know, to have 2 bedrooms for mummy and daddy. Anyway, I don't know, it's still too much. Yes, go darling.
On a different note, well, could you speak about a teacher or guru or in the Buddhist practice, trying to find someone who you can develop a relationship with, who might be able to guide you in your Buddhist practice if you're doing.
Oh, John, that's another whole discussion at 8:35. Another day.
Okay.
All right. So we're doing 90 minutes or 2 hours? Oh, good. We've got 25 more minutes. Okay, great. Well, I mean, what do you mean? But what do you mean? You sort of sounds like you want a girlfriend.
Not at all. What I'm looking for is
Yeah, I think you're looking for a girlfriend. That's not what a guru is. Lama Yeshe died 40 years ago, but he is present tense, my guru. So you're looking for a girlfriend, it sounds to me. You're looking for someone to chat to. That's not the function of a guru at all. I mean, you've got a few teachers. What's wrong with them?
In terms of I can read what Lama Yeshe wrote. I can read what Lama Zopa Rinpoche writes, but
what's missing then?
What's missing is, you know, when I come to a fork in practice in my Buddhist practice, should I, you know, go for retreats, or should I try to, you know, stay at home and meditate harder, or should I?
If you have these teachers, do you write to them and ask them?
No.
Well, then what do you? Then they're there for you. You're not using them. If Lama Zopa is your guru, you write to him and ask him. If you really don't know what decision to make, or you any other teacher. I mean, you only have one teacher. You have more than one teacher.
I can't say that I really turn to anybody.
So then what you're wanting, so you don't know yet what even your guru, you don't, so then you don't really know what the function of a teacher is then. You're not sure what a teacher is.
Maybe that's it.
I think so. It sounds like it.
And how can I find that?
Find what, darling?
Excuse me?
Find what?
What exactly, you know, what?
You haven't read so you haven't read the teachings.
Excuse me?
You haven't read the teachings on it in the Lam Rim and everything.
I have.
You have, so it doesn't help.
I have a thick head. It takes a long time for me to think that.
Well, I mean, okay. Let's do it another day. Another day, darling. Another day. There's too much to talk about.
Okay, thank you.
What else, people? Any other questions? Nothing? No questions?
Hi, Robina. It's
Hello,
Rebecca.
sweetheart. Who is it?
Hi. Can you see me?
Hello, Rebecca. Yes, you talk to me.
Hi, Robina. I just wondered, I have the teachings, I hear the teachings, I can, think about all that, but when the emotions come, they completely overtake me. And I
Right.
just wondered how to navigate when you know the teachings but can't apply the teachings. What?
Sweetheart, I got a feeling that just means you have to keep practicing. There's no mistake. It just shows how hard it is, that's all. It just shows how hard it is, darling, that's all. So there's nothing wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. You just have to keep practicing. The Tibetans have a lovely way of putting, we say practice makes perfect. They say nothing ever gets more difficult with practice. Okay. So you're not doing anything wrong, Rebecca. It just shows how hard practice is. So learn from it and pick yourself up and just keep moving, baby. I swear that's it. All right. That's the answer. And be content with how much you can do. Rejoice in your progress. Don't always think you're not doing enough. Okay. That's really important. Good, darling. What else? Yes.
I
George.
always thought in the Four Immeasurables that you first had to have loving compassion, kindness, and sympathetic joy in order to get to the last one with the equanimity.
No. It's the opposite. Equanimity is first. And sometimes that prayer, equanimity comes last. It's true.
Right.
It's
right,
true.
yeah.
It's true. But equanimity is the first step. You have to first establish everybody wants to be happy in order to want them to be happy, which is called love. And you have to first establish everybody wants not to suffer, which is compassion, before you want them not to suffer. You've got to have that logic rooted down first. Then on the basis you begin to grow the wish they be happy, not because they make you happy, but because they want it. So you have to first establish that they want it. That's equanimity, equally.
But it's
all
the first one. Not, I always assume it was the last one.
Because sometimes in the prayer, they put equanimity last. That's why. I'm just saying that. But in the development of it, equanimity is the very first one. You've got to establish logically that they want to be happy. Then you can begin to develop the love for them, which is may you be happy. Love, the definition is may you be happy. So why would I want an enemy to be happy if I haven't discovered they want to be happy? They don't make me, the logic we use now as to wanting someone to be happy is because they make me happy. We're trying to completely change that. Do you see? It comes forth in the prayer often. That's the point. I don't understand why.
Yeah.
I know, I agree.
That's why I'm confused.
I know, I'm confused too. Yes, darling.
So when I hear your teachings on equanimity, they're so uplifting, but then I check my mind for any similar ideas or notions. And what I come up against is this idea that everybody's just looking out for themselves, and that's completely different. So
It's true. And they are, because they've got attachment.
So how do I flip that into what your teachings say, which is more the basis for love and compassion?
But I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong in recognizing that everybody's selfish and self-centered and just wants to make themselves happy. You're right. But that's not what we're trying to prove here. We're trying to prove something else.
So is it connecting to and like rejoicing in their happiness and feeling their suffering and wishing that for them?
Not yet. That comes later. This is why these techniques, they're quite specific. They're like quite specific. So equanimity is a specific thought. A thought, one thought. Each enemy, friend, and stranger are equal to each other from the one point of view. They each want happiness and don't want suffering. That precisely is a definition of equanimity. That's it. On the basis of this, you can then begin to do the other techniques that grow the thought. May they be happy, which is love. May they not suffer, which is compassion. They come like 4 or 5 steps on. There's these gradual, incremental, precise thinkings. They're very precise thinkings, not as vague emotions. You with me? Okay. You're right, then. What you say, everyone's up for themselves. It's true. Automatically, because we have attachment. Go on, what? What?
So those thoughts aren't the same. Like
They're utterly profoundly different.
Yeah. So how to connect them?
So why do you want to connect them? What are you talking about? So what you're saying is you notice everybody's out for themselves.
Right, or how is that? It seems so nihilistic or dismal.
But it's true. It is like, but it's like that. So you recognize that. That's one thought. Now put it aside, please, and try and develop this thought.
Everybody wants happiness and everybody wants to avoid suffering.
Yeah. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
So what we're trying to do, the point here is not a nihilistic thing. It's trying to get past attachment, which does own, when you're attached to somebody, you want them to be happy. You agree? You love them tremendously. And it's easy, isn't it? And you want them to not suffer, don't you? Even your pussycat. I mean, the compassion people have for their pussycats is unbelievable. Do you understand? So when you recognize how we are now because of attachment, we definitely know love and compassion, but it's only for that tiny group. So if the rat is there, you're happy when it dies. If you hate this rat, you're having a panic attack about the rat or the spider, you don't give a damn in hell if it suffers. You just want it out of your life because it's your enemy. So you've got to recognize the spider wants to be happy just like your pussycat. If you can think about it logically, you can prove it's true. You agree that the spider feels just like the pussycat, wants to be happy. Well, that's what you're trying to prove. You're getting yourself out of it. And this is the basis to recognize everybody, although we're all deluded and ridiculous and self-centered and miserable, but we're driven by this fundamental wish to be happy and not suffer. That's all we're trying to recognize, to get ourselves out of it. And then we're slowly starting to develop, I want the spider to be happy. And I want my pussycat to be happy equally. Eventually, several steps on. Do you understand? Good, okay. Hello, Teresa. Hello, sweetheart. Talk to me.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, great. Thank you, Venerable Robina. My question is around equanimity, and I find that when I've read through these prayers and meditated on them, that I often sense this line on equanimity as also within myself not having attachment or aversion to anything that I experience. Because I feel a sense of...
What's the point? I've lost a bit.
Oh, you couldn't hear it?
I can hear you, but I'm lost the thoughts. What are you saying?
Oh, so I'm saying that in the experience of equanimity or in reading this line and meditating on it, I have felt that it also was connected to not having attachment or aversion to any of my own experiences of things that I experience within me, emotions, thoughts, like not being graspy at a thought. Like if I'm free from that attachment, then I can experience a little bit of equanimity. Or is it only having to do with the friend, enemy, stranger?
I don't understand at all. I'm so sorry.
Okay. I don't really know how to phrase it any differently.
Okay. Do you understand what equanimity is?
Yes, in the way that you described it, yes.
Okay. So this prayer is actually the aspiration that others have this equanimity. So I'm trying to now describe how we get equanimity. That's the point. That's what I'm describing here. The aspiration is, may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of attachment, anger. So this is a wish for that others have equanimity. That's the prayer. But what I'm doing here is describing to us what it is so that we can get it. So you're correct in what you're saying. We're describing how we get equanimity.
Okay.
I mean, if you don't know what it is yourself, how can you expect others to get it, you know?
Okay, yes. Thank you. That's helpful.
All right, darling. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? Anybody in Mexico or Spain, Fernando?
I have been asking them if they want to ask, but they don't want to ask right now. Right. So Malu, Paco.
Okay, darling, good. Okay, then come on. Malu, talk to me. Unmute.
Hi, Venerable.
Hi, sweetheart.
You remember, my English is very bad.
Never mind.
And, ¿cómo se dice, Fernando?
Yes, I will translate. Go on.
Okay, go.
Ok, digo, en realidad, más allá que una pregunta, quiero agradecer por las enseñanzas que nos estás brindando, porque estamos logrando una mejor comprensión sobre los 4 pensamientos inconmensurables y que creo que son súper importantes para empezar a, ¿cómo se dice? Que son
Robina,
las,
muy bien. ¿Y tú,
ajá, que son las bases para empezar a practicar la compasión.
Okay, more than a question, I just want to thank you for all these teachings that you're giving us in relation to the four incommensurable thoughts, which are the basis to start to develop love and compassion.
Exactly.
And so,
Good.
Dile muchas, bueno, thank you very much.
Okay, that's it. Okay, darling, pleasure. Who else? Okay, who else has something to say? Yes.
Not a question.
All right, darling, talk.
Share something.
Yes, please.
So I've been introduced to you through Instagram and something to think about, right?
Good, yes.
Right? Every day I'm just like, I love it.
Good, darling.
And you had talked about the ant and, you know, the rat and everyone and that they all want to be happy, right?
That's right.
And so I moved into a new place about 2 months ago, and across the road is a colony of cats.
Oh gosh, yes.
Right, and so I started noticing them, and then I saw that they had bowls and someone was turning up every day to feed them, but I thought I'm going to feed them too. So I bought food and I started feeding them. And then I bumped into the woman who takes care of them regularly, and we started talking, and she said, yeah, just be careful because there's a possum and he comes and he
eats the lot.
all their food. So
That's right.
Yeah, so she said, don't feed him too early in the day.
Okay.
So my window across the road, I can see them. I can
Yeah.
see the bowl and I can see who's feeding them.
Right.
And I thought, no, I do want to feed them a bit earlier because I'd see them in the mornings, like kind of hungry. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do the morning feed. So I fed them in the morning, and then I turned and I saw this, not like a possum in Australia. The possums are oh my goodness, he was like an alien, and he came out from the truck and beaten up, and he went to the bowl and he started eating. And I was upstairs at my window and I was like, oh,
that's
gotta
right.
go and shoot a possum.
That's right.
And I ran downstairs and I heard your voice in my head say, the ant just wants to be happy. Don't squash the ant, just, you know, the rat. And I was like, oh, the possum just wants, he's hungry too, he just wants to eat. And so I didn't shoo him. I let him just, you know,
Eat everybody else's breakfast.
yeah. Well, she's going to come back in the afternoon anyway.
So the possum won't come in the afternoon.
No, because he shouldn't be out in the day anyway. He's nocturnal, and he was blind, you know, he's blind from the day.
Oh,
right?
Really?
Yeah, because they only come out at night.
Oh,
so,
really?
So he must have been starving for him to like come out and look for the bowl. Yeah, and he's like, but your voice came to me. And I went back upstairs and my boyfriend said, I thought you were going to shoot the possum. And I said, well, I can't because he's hungry too. And I said, you know, something to think about.
There you go. That's it. That's the proof of the pudding. Well done, girl. You got it. Except the trouble is, if the possum comes and then, you know, rips out everybody's breakfast. This is the dilemma, you know. It's like the dilemma of having a snake that wants to eat a live mouse. It's difficult. It's difficult to try and make everybody happy.
But I'm a new addition to the feeding.
Okay, you
cycle.
are, yes.
So that's why I thought, well, this, you know, I'm extra. So
Right.
they're still going to get her feed in the
That's
afternoon.
right, exactly.
So now I'm feeding the possum.
My gosh.
But I'm sharing it just because
I understand,
it
darling.
came into my mind.
Oh, good. I'm very happy.
And I was like, wow, it's working.
Well done, girl. Good on you. Well done. That's a good story.
So there's
Thank
a
you.
fat possum in Red Hook.
There you go. I love it. Okay, you people, look, it's no, even more time. Come on. Questions, everybody. Maria, questions? Nothing? Everything made sense?
Yeah, it's so new to me.
New?
Yeah, it's all really new.
So it's make common sense?
Yeah, it does.
Interesting, Maria. What else then, people? Come on. Maybe it's enough. Maybe it's enough. So let's just summarize, okay? From the big picture point of view, you know, as you know, if you know this Lam Rim, this packaging of all the Buddhist teachings, they're all done in order, and they all do it in also in 3 levels. So, of course, Lama Zopa, respecting the lineage, would call the first teachings that all to do with karma, the basic one of abiding by the laws of karma. He calls that, they call it the teaching. He would say it's the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the least capability. Well, you know, I call it junior school. Like we get that immediately, you know. And then you got the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the middle capability. And then those two are the wisdom wing. And this is the nuts and bolts, understanding karma, understanding the consequences of your actions that you produce yourself, wanting then to put yourself together, then understanding your mind. So in other words, controlling your body, speech, and mind. It's a very logical progress. So you really start to become in charge of yourself, lessening your neuroses, your attachment, your anger, your fears, your jealousy, and then growing naturally your sense of contentment. And now you start to look at the rest of the world and go, oh my God, we're all in the same boat. And that's the compassion wing. And that's the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the greatest capability. So the compassion wing is advanced, people. That's why I said, if we can't understand the basics of what attachment and aversion are from understanding the Buddhist model of the mind in high school, how can you do the compassion wing? It's a surprise to us because we like the idea of compassion in the West. We leap into it. And then especially when you start to really understand, we're all in the same boat. Everybody's harming, just to protect themselves out of attachment and aversion. Everybody's getting harmed due to their past karma. This kind of constant cycle of insanity. When you realize we're all in the same boat, when you realize we're all producing ourselves and producing our own habits and own suffering, then you can begin to have real compassion for everybody. That's the part that's hard, And equanimity is the starting point of that one. Get ourselves out of the equation. Because all the possum is sitting there. The possum is desperate and hungry and grasping and frantic and hungry. And the pussies are desperate and hungry and grasping. And they're both coming from the same place. The difficulty is knowing how to help them without them harming each other. That's the problem. But knowing everybody wants to be happy. No one wants to suffer. The tragedy is we don't know how to accomplish it. And we end up making a mess, So we're learning in the beginnings to know about ourselves so we can put ourselves together so we can be wiser in this ability, first to want others to be happy and want them not to suffer. But the crucial one is to know how. That's the wisdom part. So it's an incremental process, step by baby, step by baby step. So I think we can finish. Rethinking here, there's nearly 2 hours, all these thoughts we've had, none have gone astray. It's the Buddhist view. They're not just lost. They've gone into our mind, programmed us there. So we delight in listening, these seeds we've planted. We think maybe nourish these seeds we've planted by listening. Take whatever tools we can, do the best we can with it, one step at a time, like I said to Rachel. Delight in our progress and never give up, nourishing these seeds and molding this mind of ours into this marvelous person that we can become for our sake and the sake of others. Changchod Sam Chogrin Poche, Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyochik, Ke Panyam Pa Me Payang, Gong Ne Gong Du Balba Shok. Okie doke. Thank you, Sheila.